All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, in a shock to no one, the college football playoff is set to expand once again. By 2026, there will be a 14-team playoff in place, which will replace the 12-team playoff that hasn't even debuted yet. Now, I've talked about this before, and I'm going to continue to say this. This is all about money. As the school presidents and the school chancellors, they see dollar signs, and you can thank a network like ESPN for making it happen. Why? Because as long as they flash cash out there, these guys are going to do it, and they're going to chase that dollar at whatever expense. So, as I continue to say, the gap between the Big Ten, the SEC, and everybody else is just going to continue to grow. As for the Big Ten and the SEC, their pie is going to their cut of the pie is going to be much bigger than everybody else. And because of that, between the television deals and then their cuts from the college football playoff, the race is only going to intensify for the schools that are not currently in the SEC and the Big Ten to attempt to posture to get into those leagues. And the SEC and the Big Ten, like I said before, and the bigger that you make the playoff, the more that these two leagues are going to dominate the amount of participants in said field every single year. Now, what could a 14-team playoff look like? Well, we know that the top two teams are going to get a first round bye while everybody else slugs it out. And clearly, the race is going to be on to get one of those top two seeds. But we know that they're still going to be arguing over it because it's looking like, the top five ranked conference champions are going to be in this field, as well as the nine highest ranked teams that are not conference champions, or for the most part, you know, you look at it and say, what other conference champions, maybe from a group of five school, that are going to get in there? We know that a group of five, one group of five school is going to get in there. We know that Notre Dame is going to get in there if they are ranked high enough, and then everybody else is going to slug it out. We've seen a lot of contention with this deal already. Basically, the SEC and the Big Ten automatically wanted to have one of those first round buys, just due to the fact that, hey, we're the SEC, or hey, we are the Big Ten. It's basically, unfortunately, and it's a travesty for college athletics from the standpoint that the SEC and the Big Ten have basically come together and merged to force the hands of everybody else involved. Outgoing American Athletic Conference Commissioner Mike Oresco is not on board with this format. And but of course, unfortunately for his sake, he doesn't have enough support behind him. You look at both Oregon State and Washington State, who have fought valiantly to continue to carry the Pac-12 banner in spite of everybody leaving the league, and their cut of this playoff format for now, at least. Um, is going to be substantially smaller than what it was when they were members of the original Pac 12. This has put, the current Pac 12 conference commissioner, Teresa Gold, into a bind because she's really not signing anything right now. Why? Because, Oregon State and Washington State, they have that 2-year window from the NCAA to figure out what their next steps are going to be. So, it's one of those again. The SEC and the Big Ten are just forcing the hands of everybody else involved and basically saying, hey, this is the way it's going to be, like it or lump it. That's all you can do. For Notre Dame, I've talked about possibly before about Notre Dame possibly having to join a conference, but as long as Notre Dame still has a seat at the table, which they currently do, and let's see what type of deal they get from NBC or somebody else the next time around, and as long as Notre Dame's going to get a substantial cut of this college football playoff money, which they are, the Irish will continue to operate as an independent. Now, we know about it, we're calling it the group of five. Honestly, we might as well call it the group of seven. And the reason why I say it is this: the ACC and the Big 12 are at the mercy of the Big Ten and the SEC. Number one, money wise, okay, there's still a gap between financially there between the ACC and the Big 12 in comparison to both the Big 10 and the SEC. And because of that, you're going to have schools in those two respective conferences that are going to be looking for outs. We already see it with Florida State in the ACC, and it's going to happen as far as the Seminoles leaving the ACC. It's just a matter. It's not a matter of if. It's more like when, and it's more like whether they go to the Big Ten or they go to the SEC. And like I've said before, and I will continue to say it, Florida State is not leaving the ACC alone. I guarantee you they're going to take some schools with them. So, with that said, the ACC and the Big 12 will be at the mercy of the Big 10 and the SEC. I know it's been thrown around saying, well, the Big 10 and SEC each will get three automatic bids, while the Big 12 and ACC will get two. In my opinion, just let the 14 best teams in the country compete regardless of league. But let's not be naive about this either, that we know that both the Big Ten and SEC are going to dominate the amount of teams that they get into this field. So you look at this, and I ask you, what's next for college football, and what direction is the sport heading into? Again, it's one of those where, as the gap continues to grow between the haves and have-nots, it's going to push it over the edge at some point. And again, I cannot harp on this enough. This is what happens when you don't have revenue sharing, and this is what happens when you don't have a legit conference commissioner, or not even conference commissioner, rather commissioner of the sport, excuse me, to get ahead of this thing. Because at the end of the day, you need some law and order, and there is no law and order right now going on. And of course, it's going to continue to put a strain travel wise on the other sports at these schools that rely on football. And this is why, the regional thing for these leagues simply does not exist anymore. And it's one of those where, okay, it's all fun and games for football, but what about those non football sports? Now you're asking these kids to travel cross country just to compete in conference games or conference series, whatever. But, it's one of those where, again, unfortunately, the landscape of college football is changing, and it's going to continue to change. Like I said before, this thing wasn't stopping at 12. It ain't stopping at 14. And once they see how much money they can get from this, they can say whatever they want as far as like, well, let's see how the 12-team format looks and we'll go from there. No, it's just about how much money that they can get. And as long as the money is thrown out there, these guys that are running things really don't care, because that's all they see is dollar signs. So before we even get to 12, we're at 14. And the next question for me is going to be, how much longer before we have to wait to see a 16-team playoff? How much longer before we have to wait to see a 20-team conference? Both of these are right around the bend. It ain't stopping here. And let's just see what this 14-team format looks like. It's a circus right now, and the circus is just continuing to grow. So, folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.